27 hingga 46 juta pekerjaan baru yang seperti ini. Dan kedepannya akan ada peningkatan tenaga kerja pada sektor-sektor kesehatan. Seperti kita lihat saat ini dengan adanya COVID, membuat sektor kesehatan menjadi, kita lihat adalah sebuah sektor yang sangat penting. Dari penelitian terhadap vaksin hingga akhirnya bagaimana bisa menangani sebuah penyakit. Bagaimana umat manusia bisa menangani sebuah pandemi. Juga konstruksi, manufaktur, juga retail. Zaman dulu kita harus berusaha payah jalan ke sana kemari untuk membeli sebuah barang. Saat ini cukup di rumah, ambil handphone kita, semuanya yang merubah landscape dan tantangan yang ada di depan mata kawan-kawan sekalian. Dari sana kira-kira apa yang dibutuhkan? Apa yang harus dipersiapkan oleh kawan-kawan semua? Satu hal yaitu skills. Skills seperti apa yang harus dipersiapkan? Next slide, ada top 10 skills untuk 2025 yang harus kawan-kawan siapkan. Yang pertama, analytical thinking and innovation, leadership and social influence, active learning and learning strategies, technology use, monitoring and control, complex problem solving, technology design and programming, critical thinking and analysis, resilience, stress tolerance and flexibility, ini harus dimiliki oleh kawan-kawan, creativity, originality and initiatives, reasoning and problem solving, also ide. Ini ada top 10 skill untuk 2025 atau di era-era saat ini yang sangat penting oleh pekerjaan, dan ini harus dimiliki oleh kawan-kawan semua. Sumbernya diambil dari World Economic Forum pada tahun 2020. Di sini tampak bahwa salah satu dari top 10 skills tersebut adalah problem solving. Bagaimana kita memecah sebuah masalah, dan ini harus melalui pendekatan ilmiah, dan ini harus melalui sebuah approach yang terstruktur. Kenapa? Oleh sebab itulah Mile Zero Project ini mengangkat problem solving sebagai salah satu tema dalam acara ini. Pertanyaan selanjutnya, karena problem solving masuk ke dalam salah satu skill yang harus kita kuasai, kira-kira langkah-langkah apa saja untuk problem solving? Next slide. Kita lihat ada 7 langkah untuk problem solving. Yang pertama, kawan-kawan harus bisa defining the problems, definisikan masalah. Jadi bagaimana kawan-kawan mendefine sebuah masalah dengan sebuah cara yang sangat precise dan harus bisa melihat kebutuhannya. Yang kedua, pisahkanlah masalah. Jangan seluruh masalah kalian gabungkan jadi satu. Kalian harus bisa memilih dan memilah mana masalah yang memang masuk dalam satu kategori. Dari kategori tersebut, prioritaskan problem tersebut. Mana masalah yang paling mengganggu, mana masalah yang paling berdampak, mana masalah yang bisa dipecahkan. Biasanya prioritas masalah ini 80% ada di sana. Kita ambil Pareto 80-20. Setelah kita tahu masalah mana yang paling prioritas, selanjutnya adalah buat rencana kerja, juga scheduling. Setelah itu, lakukan analisis kritis terhadap top masalah kita. Setelah kita analisis, buatlah sintesis dari hasil analisis yang telah kalian buat. Di akhir, siapkan cara komunikasi yang menarik, yang enak dilihat orang, sehingga dapat dikomunikasikan apa masalahnya dan bagaimana cara menyelesaikannya. lewat analisis yang sudah kalian buat. Ini kira-kira yang kami rumuskan dari sumbernya Bulletproof Problem Solving, Korn and McLean pada tahun 2019. Jadi teman-teman ini sangat-sangat masih baru sekali, dan ini semoga bisa menjawab bagaimana stepping langkah-langkah untuk problem solving ini. Di akhir saya ingin menyampaikan bagaimana sumber daya manusia dalam era adaptasi kebiasaan baru pada saat ini. Next slide. Setelah masalah terpecahkan atau problem solving dengan approach 7 langkah tadi, teman-teman, saya harap semua yang mengikuti Mile Zero Project ini punya mindset yang baru, punya attitude atau perilaku yang baru, juga yang jelas punya budaya dan cara kerja yang baru. Tinggalkan hal-hal yang sifatnya monoton. Kita sebutkan tadi, if work akan hilang. Oleh karena itu yang monoton, yang berulang, cari sesuatu yang kreatif, ambil sedikit resiko. Pendekatannya harus cerdas, harus inovatif. Kawan-kawan harus bisa menjadi seorang yang fleksibel, peduli, empathy, open-minded, pemikiran harus terbuka, teman-teman harus tangguh juga, dan yang jelas harus visioner dan memiliki kualitas leader. Kawan-kawan, ini sedikit yang bisa kami share, singkat, padat, jelas, kurang dari 6 slides, tapi kami yakin inilah bagaimana kawan-kawan bisa mendapatkan sebuah ilmu top 10 skill dari saat ini atau era 4.0 ini. Salah satunya adalah problem solving. Tadi sudah sebutkan ada 7 langkah, dan harapannya kawan-kawan bisa adaptasi kebiasaan baru dengan 3 hal: mindset, attitude, and new way of doing things. Semoga bermanfaat. Saya tidak akan berlama-lama, saya akan kembalikan kepada Mbak Biza. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Nun wal qalam wa maisturun. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sukses untuk Anda semua.
Waalaikumsalam.
Salam inovasi.
Terima kasih, Pak. Iya, salam inovasi. Terima kasih banyak Pak Danang atas sharingnya tadi tentang problem solving, dan juga mengingatkan kita untuk harus fleksibel, harus punya mindset yang maju, punya attitude, peduli dan open-minded, visioner, dan juga mempunyai strong leadership skill, Pak. Oke, nah sekarang kita langsung aja masuk ke sesi yang kedua. Sesi kali ini dibawakan oleh Mr. Aaron Neo. Mr. Aaron Neo adalah Accelerator Director of GK Plug and Play Indonesia, yang mendukung inisiatif Presiden Jokowi untuk menjadikan Indonesia pemimpin ekonomi digital di Southeast Asia. Oke, untuk Mr. Aaron, the time is yours.
Terima kasih banyak ya. Aku hari ini campur-campur bahasa Inggris bahasa Indo ya, takutnya kalau bahasa Indo doang nanti message-nya not that exact ya. But thank you so much for having me here today. It'll be a quite quick sharing. Hopefully we'll get to answer more of your questions. Tapi I'll talk a bit about Plug and Play, overviewnya gimana, and why we are so excited to be helping to build the tech ecosystem in Indonesia. And then after that, I'll be talking a bit about startup lifecycle, the different stages, product market fit, and then a journey to validate a problem, and a solution. And I'll end it with some value propositions that we can discuss and talk about. So Plug and Play itu apa ya? So we are from Silicon Valley. We pride ourselves as being the ultimate innovations platform, and we have 3 core pillars. First and foremost, we are venture capital, which means kita invest in a lot of early stage startups. We started investing in the mid to late 90s, and sampai sekarang we are one of the most active early stage investors in the world, investing in over 220 companies per year. And in doing our investments, we saw a gap in the market in terms of helping our companies grow and accelerate their growth. So we launched our accelerator program in 2006. Sampai sekarang sih kita udah ada lebih dari 50 program di 32 kota and 15 negeri all over the world. And our program is different from other accelerated incubation programs in that the core focus of our program is to really bridge the gap and facilitate collaboration between startups and corporations. And that leads me to our corporate innovation platform, where we work with over 400 of the biggest corporates globally in helping them find startup solutions that they can use to help address their focus areas or their problem statements. Di Indonesia sendiri sih kita masuknya di tahun 2017 at the behest of Pak Jokowi, and kita sampai sekarang sih udah run 7 batches, and we have accelerated over 85 startups, and we have made 27 investments. Dari sisi corporate partners kami, kita ada a lot of big corporations in Indonesia, the likes of Astra, BCA, BNI, Sinarmas, and the likes. So at our core, see what we're trying to do and how we're trying to help accelerate the growth of the Indonesian ecosystem is to really create entire ecosystem of change makers that really facilitates win-win situations between everyone. Yeah. Jadi at our core, it's between startups and corporations. For startups, we lend them an air of credibility. We give them the ability to work with big corporations, because a lot of times dari si startupnya, kalau mereka masih quite young and the company does not have a really long track record, it's really hard for them to work with big corporations. For the corporations itself, in our experience, actually, working with startups is a very good framework for innovation. So working with startups enables corporations to inject that sense of urgency and agility into traditionally very bureaucratic structures. And of course, we also work with other stakeholders in the ecosystem, VCs and investors, to invest and co-invest, and also to fund great ideas and great founders. Universities like the likes of ITB to really nurture the youngest and brightest minds and really see what young people are interested in right now. And of course, governments and regulatory boards to really work in 2 ways. One is to ensure that all the companies that we work with are adhering to the regulations in place. And 2 is to really share our insights based on our experiences in other markets as to how we can look at governance going forward in terms of what regulations to set, what to anticipate, and what best practices are. Just a snapshot of our locations globally. Silicon Valley headquarters, but you can see we have many offices in the world. Regional office in Singapore, but we're also quite big in Tokyo, Shanghai, and Abu Dhabi. And I mentioned this earlier, came in, you see this picture of Pak Jokowi sama our founder Said di Istana, signing the agreement in 2016. Just a snapshot of what we have done in the region. Kalau kita di region itself, we have accelerated over 200 startups. We do over 12 batches a year. And if you see our partners in the region, we work with big companies, Facebook, we work with Aon, Daimler, and just wanted to map out our ecosystem and what we've done since we've come to Indonesia and what we hope to do in the future and continue to do in the future. Now that I talked a bit about Plug and Play, I wanted to talk a bit and share about the focus of this sharing today is just about startup lifecycle. We work with a lot of startups, I mentioned. At our core, we differentiate ourselves by saying that our strength lies with startups, working with startups, nurturing startups, and really sourcing the best startups and helping them grow. So startups, traditional lifecycle goes like this: formation, validation, and growth. I think for the audience today, most of you guys were probably in the formation stage and then leaning towards validation. So I'll touch on those two quite a lot today. So formation is starting out. A lot of times when we work with the best founders, how they start is they get inspired by something. They have this great idea, or they're facing this really big problem, like a real pain point, and they're really passionate about addressing that. And then once they do have this passion, they try to find like-minded people or people they think work well together with them to create a team. And then from that team, you map out your idea, you create your business model canvas, and then you go to the validation stage. Validation is very important. A lot of things to remember in terms of validation is creating MVP, validating, doing customer research, iterating, and keeping that cycle going. And then growth is once you already have established product market fit. Growth is really you already know your business works. You have a customer base, and the only constraint to you growing your business is to push and put more money in. And that's the growth stage. I think for growth stage, you'll see like the likes of even Gojek, Grab, they're still in the growth stage. So I think I talked a bit about business model canvas. This one is very touches a lot with the first part, the formation stage. You have a team already. You have an idea. This business model canvas, a lot of resources online, so I won't touch over it that much. Gives you a very structured way in terms of trying to figure out what your business is. It breaks down to 9 components, and it touches upon a lot of the very important things: value proposition, customer segments, revenue, and costs. So everyone that wants to look at thinking about exploring an idea, I think this is a very good tool to do that. One core thing I want to talk about in terms of the business model canvas is the value proposition or value propositions. So this is very important. What do we mean by value proposition, right? At its core, value proposition, the fundamental question you have to answer is what value do you deliver to the customer? And this value word is quite subjective. Yeah, value comes differently to different people. So it's about identifying all the different values that you bring to each of your customer segments, and from there creating a value proposition that resonates with the people you want to target. Of course, questions you have to ask is, which of the problems are you solving? What products or services are we offering to each segment? And then once you have all this mapped out, you have an idea, then you need to create or have an idea of how to test your value proposition. And this is where the minimum viable product comes in. So once you have a value proposition, you test it out, you are trying to establish product market fit. Product market fit is a very key part of the startup lifecycle. To truly establish product market fit means that your business, you already have a product or service that you are very, very comfortable with. You understand that there is going to be a customer base that will buy once you scale production or you scale all your resources. And essentially, what you are offering has an ideal market and a captive audience that are willing and able to purchase. So in looking at product market fit, we usually talk about this pillar or this pyramid with these 5 things, right? And these 5 things matter because it's quite sequential in how to look at it. So 1, obviously, target customers. Very important. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't have a customer, then your idea, no one's going to buy your idea or your service. So when you get your target customer, you have to understand them. Really try to understand what their pain points are and what needs are not being served to them in the market. Once you identify this, you've already captured the market component of product market fit. Then you go to product. So you have a customer, you have the biggest pain points that are not being addressed right now. Then you go to value proposition. Then once you have a value proposition, you create a set of features. You create a customer experience journey. Then you test, and you keep doing this. In our experience, I think working with a lot of startups, this is not a simple thing. You go through a lot of iterations of this before making any significant traction. And even when you do have initial traction, a lot of times you will be going back to this and really trying to establish true product market fit. So in a sense, what I'm saying here is that to get to the stage of true product market fit is a very long and I will say hard journey. And people that succeed the best in this journey are people that are persistent, determined, and also passionate, because a lot of times this journey is quite hard. So passion is very important when you are trying to create a startup. So 4 stages in product market fit. I talked about this a bit, but it's very good to look at it like this. So 1, the first thing is the target market, underserved needs, is customer research. Then you define your value proposition, you create and test your MVP, and you reiterate. Just going to quickly touch upon a few of these. Customer research is very important. A lot of times when we meet young founders and they have an idea, a lot of times they look at the idea from the lens of themselves, their own perspective, saying that, oh, if there was this in the market, I would buy it. What's more important is to look at it from your target market's lenses or perspective. would they buy your product? Is what you're offering something that is useful to them? Is there no alternatives in the market? And then from there, you can really choose an initial target audience that will be the first people to adopt your product or service, and they can be the ones that can be your mavens or people that will spread news about your product or service. Because to achieve the initial traction, is very important to leverage on like free marketing, like word of mouth, referrals, because paid advertising or trying to pay for customers at a very early stage is not very feasible and not very sustainable. I think you talked about product value proposition already. I think this is a very concise way to look at it. Value proposition is a promise of value to be delivered, communicated, or and acknowledged, right? And then it's also a belief from the customer. So it's very important when you look at value proposition to look at it from a customer perspective. For them, how will they receive your product or service? How will they feel or how will they experience it? And then what is their reaction to that experience? Also quite important to think about during value proposition is how your customer will acquire your product or service. MVP is quite simple. I think it's very, very self-explanatory in terms of the name, minimum viable product, because a lot of times you need to test a few times before you get to sort of a product that is ready for the market. It is important to be able to test in shorter cycles, and this is why the concept of creating MVPs is very important. You want to be able to test out whether you're in the right direction. You want to be able to quickly see whether you're on track or not, and from there really be able to quickly tweak your product with the goal of creating a product that when you do go live and launch will be accepted by the audience and market. Obviously, when having MVP and a prototype, it's very important to test, and who you test with is also very important. A lot of times where we see pitfalls from people is that when they create an MVP, the people they test with is very biased. So what I mean by this is if you test your minimum viable product with a segment of the market that is your close friends or people you know, it's not a true representation of what the market is like in its entirety, right? What makes sense or what works best is to get a sample of the entire market you're trying to get. So let's say your product is supposed to be very mass market. It's important that your test sample size is picks from people from the different subsets of the entire market and to get feedback from each of them so that you can really see whether your product will resonate with them. Once you do this, I think I also want to talk about market analysis. This one talks a bit more about our experience in evaluating startups and then how we view startups and ideas and which ones to pursue. So we look at three things whenever we talk about startups. Whenever we have a lot of people that pitch to us, right? So in our programs, we get about 500 applications every batch, every half year. And then in our pipeline, I think we will review about 2,000 or 2,500 startups per year. And the core thing we look at is these three things: market traction, team and structure, and scalable product. Quickly go through them. Market traction is quite simple. It's quantitative evidence of market demand. So quantitative is very important. Quantitative means it's backed by numbers. It can be quantified. So it can be backed by empirical data or numbers, right? And market demand. So market demand is the total amount of goods and services that consumers are willing to and able to purchase at a price in the marketplace. So a lot of times we see startups that have good traction, but their traction is in terms of users. And then where we see them fail is that they're not able to monetize. So this part is very important. Market demand is very important, right? The few key things that you have to remember here is willing and able to purchase and a specific price in an open and free market. This is very important, right? So this is something that I really want to stress on: market traction, quantitative, so remember backed by numbers, and market demand. Also market, I think all of you know this. This is readily available, TAM, SAM, SOM. How we look at it, most of the cases is geography. So like if you're offering a service that is cross-border, your TAM could be like entire APAC. Your SAM would be Indonesia only, and your SOM maybe is Jabodetabek because you're launching it here first. But it's about applying some logic in terms of how you look at market. So these is backed by numbers and backed by reasoning. The combination of two of these will give you the TAM, SAM, and SOM. Market demand, so it's market size, is a signal of demand, but not a measure of demand itself. Right? A lot of times when we talk to founders, they always talk about market size, market size. What's important to see here is, although in general having a big market size, as in like your TAM is huge, is generally a bit better. Having a small market size does not mean the market demand is also very small. There are a lot of cases where people create niche products or niche services that address a very specific pain point to a market that is very high urgency. And in that case, it's a little easier to create product market fit, a lot easier to get them to convert to payments. So it's important not to confuse market size with market demand. Yeah. And the key thing here to remember is market demand. And team structure. This one, I think, is a lot has been written about this, but we also see this all the time. 75% of startups fail because not having the right team. This one I want to touch on a bit, right? This one is what we've seen recently also in the past few years in Indonesia. So in terms of teams, whenever we see teams that come out of university, a lot of times, I think I'm guilty of this too when I did a startup, is that you create a team with your friends, usually people you get along with. And what happens in some cases in that situation is that a lot of times these teams have same mindset, same beliefs, and same vision, which is good. I mean, you're aligned, same vision, same expectations. But what's lacking here is that a lot of times there is no one to play devil's advocate. There's no one to offer a contrarian view. No one to really challenge and see whether this team is going in the right direction. So a lot of times when trying to create a team, I think it's good to find a balance between experience, technical skills, soft skills, vision, but also try and find someone that you can have constructive arguments with. This is very important. I think that's one of the biggest indicators of whether we see startups fail or not, is the ability to have very constructive arguments within the team itself. And I think they only have 3 or 4 C-level positions, The chief should mean something, and it really reflects poorly on companies when they have too many C-level positions. Scalable products, this is just looking at, when we mean scalable here, we mean sustainable, we mean growth potential. So 2 things to really see here, right, is that how do you know if a product is scalable, right, is whether you can establish product market fit. And then how you can establish product market fit is to see whether your product has a market that's willing to purchase, right? But also what's important to see here is the unit economics of things. So on a very per unit basis, so if you're selling a product on a very core product basis, do you make money off every transaction? Or do you have to discount that transaction and lose money? So that's very important, very fundamentally core, is that your unit economics have to make sense. And then there has to be a market for you to scale, and there's a path for you to grow. Because a lot of times how we look at investments is that we want to look for the hockey stick or the inflection point in the growth, right? We want the growth of the company to go like flat and then just hit that exponential growth. And there are usually indicators that show us that this model can work. Couple things to look at for scalable products. Obviously, it's not like this for every case, but 1, the value proposition has to be innovative, has to be unique, has to resonate. 2, this model has to be repeatable. What this means is that it can be applied to different categories. I think an example is maybe you are creating distribution channel for beauty products. So usually in this case, this system can be applied to other categories like baby products, fashion products. High growth, high margins is very obvious. And then vast distribution potential is also good. This is the advantage of everyone being connected. The advantage of infrastructure being built up in Indonesia is that distribution is getting a lot easier. What we like to see is like products or services that really have the potential to be distributed to a mass market in a very quick and efficient way. Some financial analysis we look at too. Some metrics. I think people talk about ARR, MMR, customer metrics, financial metrics. But what's important is the first thing we ask really when a company just starts and we talk to the founders and we see that they're quite interesting is that, so what's your North Star metrics? What are the metrics that you as a company hold yourselves and put up every day and monitor? And this is very important because one, it shows that the entire company is unified in terms of going towards one goal. But two, also how you set your metrics kind of shows an indication of what you view as core to your business, and then also gives us a way to look into your thought process. You know, sometimes someone comes to us with an idea that's quite interesting. Then they tell us their North Star metrics is something that doesn't make sense. And of course, it's a red flag for us, right? So it's important to have a North Star metrics that everyone can go towards and make sense in terms of that metrics is key to your growth or your success. Some customer metrics, I think you can read about this online, CAC, customer acquisition costs, LTV, churn, all these relate to unit economics, right? And unit economics is just a way to look at whether your business model or revenue model makes sense. Some financial metrics here, I don't think I'll talk about this, but valuation, I think once you guys do start raising money, it's important to think about valuation, how to calculate, how to justify your valuation. A lot of times we meet startups and founders and they say, I want to raise like 500,000 for 10%. And then we ask them, oh, why? And they're not able to articulate why. So it's important to be able to justify your valuation. Obviously, a lot of people use like financial tools like the DCF model and stuff like that. But a lot of times in startups, you don't have the luxury of historical data. So you need to think about how to sell your valuation. Burn, I'm not going to talk about this. And the last thing I want to talk about, and it relates to startups and what to think about, is competitor analysis. So a lot of times startups we meet, founders are usually very idealistic, very passionate. I think it comes hand in hand, right? A lot of times people that are very passionate are very idealist. So sometimes that idealism, that passion gets founders very narrow-minded in terms of believing that their business or their solution or their product is so unique that no one else is doing it. And it brings up a lot of questions, right? So whenever I ask a founder, oh, who are your competitors? If someone says that, oh, there's no competitors, then it's kind of a flag, because if your product is so intriguing, or if your service is so unique, or if the market is so big, why isn't someone doing this? Why isn't someone addressing this? One, could the market not be ready yet? Two, is it hard to monetize? Or three, are you not studying your competitors well? So it's very important to look at the market, see what's out there. It's always good to look at what they're doing, strengths and weaknesses. It really gives perspective and helps you to really frame your thoughts and your ideas too. And it's also very important to be cognizant of what your competitors are doing, because it's a very big indicator of where the market is going. Just a framework. A lot of times we see decks like this. Obviously, you put your business and your competitors, and then you put all the variables that you guys are measuring on. But please, when you do this, on the left side, the variables you're measuring on, please make sure the variables you choose shines your business in a good light, right? Sometimes we see people that choose things that make their companies look worse than their competitors, and that's also very concerning. I think I just want to quickly summarize this, just in general, in terms of startups, what we experience, and what is important. I think what is important here is that, as Padana mentioned, I think it's always good to be entrepreneurial. It's good to pursue your passion, and especially when you're younger and you're still in college and you're just getting out of college, it's the best time to really start a business. But in terms of starting a business or starting a startup, vision is very important, right? Vision is what drives you, and vision is what is going to drive your company. And your vision and your ability to articulate and tell that story, it's what's going to help you throughout your entire journey. Because in every step of the way, you have to sell your vision to the different stakeholders, right? First, you're going to sell the vision to yourself. You have to believe that vision, and that drives passion, and that makes you persistent, and that helps you when times get tough. Because being a founder is going to be tough, and if you don't have that passion and that drive, when you hit your first roadblock, you're going to go back and say, why don't I just take a corporate job that's a lot more stable, a lot more secure, and I don't have, it's a 9 to 5. I don't have to think about it all the time. Once you do get that vision also, you'll be selling it to investors, employees, people you want to hire, customers too. So vision is very important. Two, once you do have a vision, please try to look at things from a customer perspective. I think if you read about all the biggest unicorns in the world, Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they're all very centered around customers and user-centric, customer-centric development and feature development, right? They know their customers intrinsically, their needs, and then they create products and features that suit that customer. Value proposition is key. What's important to look at value proposition is for every segment that you're targeting in the market, have a unique proposition for that segment, because having one value proposition to target 5 segments of the market usually doesn't work. Yeah, I think usually every segment, let's say you're targeting middle-aged moms, young moms, you need a value proposition that's unique as compared to targeting older women. And then competitor analysis is very important, gives a reflection of the market. So always keep track of what your competitors are doing and understand what is going on in the market. Because one last thing I'll touch upon this is also when you do start getting traction and you are a founder, a lot of times you lose track of what's happening in the market because you're so busy focusing on your own business, fighting fires internally. So always be cognizant of what's happening in the market and keep track of what your competitors are doing. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Aaron, for the insightful session. Jadi tadi kita nge-touch up sendiri about the startup life cycle. So you have to first know your vision, you know your target customer, product value propositions, terus abis itu competitor analysis, and also you have to know the market demands. Before kita masuk ke session yang ketiga sama speaker terakhir kita akan sedikit Q&A dulu deh. Jadi Q&A yang pertama itu buat Pak Danang. Malam Pak Danang ingin bertanya, pertama-tama terima kasih untuk materinya Pak, untuk melatih attitude, etiket, apakah ada cara tertentu dan gimana cara Bapak awalnya mempelajari hal tersebut? Mungkin Pak Danang. Oke, kayaknya Pak Danangnya nggak ada. Mungkin kita ke pertanyaan buat Pak Aaron aja ya. Startup seperti apa yang diperlukan dan menjadi ideal saat new normal?
Ini susah ya untuk jawabnya, tapi what we can only say is ada trendsnya lah. So what has happened in the new normal obviously is consumer or people behavior has changed. So internally in Plug and Play itself, what we're looking at for the new year are a few things. One is any kind of enterprise solutions, yang B2B, that will help a lot of the bigger companies digitize and make their operations more efficient. An example of this is any kind of solution that helps maybe Tokopedia fulfill their orders faster, or like logistics companies fulfill their fulfillment faster, for like a better word. What is also interesting for us is digital health. Because of the new normal, a lot of people are more cognizant and more aware of the importance of keeping and monitoring their health. So we're seeing a lot of solutions in that space juga, which is quite interesting. Sama ketiga is retail, new retail. So fundamentally, retail is disrupted. The way people experience and purchase products udah ganti. It goes from F&B all the way to like clothing, fashion, baby products. So we're looking at any kind of solution that really seeks to disrupt that kind of experience. I think example is direct-to-consumer fashion labels that can really fulfill millennials. So like very low price, fashion products that send directly, stuff like that. So new retail is something we're looking at too.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Aaron. Our next question juga buat Mr. Aaron. Dalam membentuk startup, co-founder seperti apa yang harus dihindari dan seperti apa yang harus dicari?
Ini good question. Ini susah juga nih, case by case ya. Tapi in general, what yang hindarinya adalah orang yang mau jadi founder karena mereka they're looking for the prestige of it, right? Don't be a founder because you want to say you're a startup founder, because that's not you have to do it for the right reasons, yeah. As I mentioned earlier, being a founder, and I think I've experienced this previously too, is really very fundamentally different from working, yeah. Because being a founder means 24/7 you're thinking about your own company, and to be able to go through that and not give up, you have to be doing it for the right reasons. So the first thing we look for founders, yeah, we always ask them, why are you doing this? Kenapa? And then from there, we can assess passion, yeah. Because the best founders are always the most passionate. Karena the most passionate people will try everything they can before they fail. Obviously, it doesn't mean that they won't fail, ya. Kadang-kadang emang idenya belum mateng atau marketnya belum siap. Tapi the core thing is harus passionate. Yang dihindari juga, usually what we see is, as I mentioned, construction of the teamnya harus quite diverse, ya. Jadi, if possible, cari orang yang you get along with, obviously, but has a different perspective from you. A lot of times, yang bagus is people that are similar in certain ways in terms of like backgrounds, tapi cara perspektifnya beda. So how they view problems is different, because that way you're able to get a bigger picture of what's going on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Kalau buat Pak Danang udah ada belum ya? Oke, mungkin belum. Our next question itu, apa yang membuat startup gagal bahkan sebelum launching?
Biggest one ya nggak ada funding lah ya. I guess. Atau actually a lot of times yang ini, this is what we see a lot sih, especially with kids that go through an incubation program gitu ya di universitinya. A lot of times mereka tuh they get a good offer from outside. Let's say because obviously the best founders are usually people that are in high demand juga. Jadi let's say 4 of them are doing a startup nih, idenya oke lah, and then udah coba nih, udah mulai, terus tiba-tiba 2 of them dapat offer dari Gojek, terus gajinya quite good. It happens a lot, and this is why it goes back to the idea of why are you doing a startup? You have to really be doing it for the right reasons. You have to have benar-benar be sure that that's what you want to do and pursue, because that part was going to be the hardest. Other than that, why it fails usually is one more thing is sometimes a lot of people, as I mentioned, yang nggak suka. The best people, the smartest people usually are the most arrogant people also. And they also feel like their ideas are so good. So you need to be able to take criticism, constructive criticism, obviously, and understand feedback from the market. So it's very important once you have a product or a service to really get feedback from the customers, and then make sure that what you're offering emang orang perlu.
Okay. Buat Pak Aaron dan Pak Danang, apakah tantangan terbesar yang pernah dialami selama meniti karir dan gimana caranya melaluinya? Mungkin Pak Aaron dulu.
Biggest challenge, ini okay. I guess biggest challenge was when I was doing a startup, and then not being able to monetize, not being able to articulate the idea in a way that resonates with investors atau enggak customers, and then how I addressed it. I think I'm still doing this a lot. Everything is a learning experience. So how I was able to get past that was to seek a lot of advice, To be honest, a lot of people are willing to be mentors. And they're willing to do it for free because they want to give back. So the best thing we can do as people is to always be yearning to learn. So leverage as much as you can all the resources you have around you to constantly learn. And now also with how easy content is shared, podcasts are a great way to learn. Ebooks, it's just all about constantly learning.
Oke, thank you Kak Aaron. Nah ini pertanyaannya juga, I'm also curious about this question. Bagaimana cara menggagas startup sambil kuliah? Because a lot of people pas kuliah kan pasti mau ikutan kayak lomba-lomba hackathon gitu Kak, dan kayak mereka mau mulai startup sendiri itu menurut Kakak, what's the best way to do it in our university years?
Tough question, yeah. I guess one, if you are very interested in doing a startup, university setting does give you the best opportunity, like going through all this competition as you mentioned. So best way to do it and to do it well is to really manage your time really well. Berarti, if you want to do a startup and you're really eager to really give it a shot, a fair shot, because I assume you're gonna do this and figure out whether it's a viable career opportunity rather than going and taking a job, right? So you have to be fair with yourself and give it a truly fair shot. And what I mean by this is to dedicate a couple hours a day to focus on the startup and be very disciplined about this, yeah. Because I mean, if I think back to college, I wasn't very disciplined, right? I'd rather go hang out with my friends. I'd rather enjoy, right? But you have to really say like, oh yeah, every day dari jam 5 sampai jam 8, I'm going to work on my startup and it's going to be like a job. And I'm going to really dedicate that time and I'm going to figure out whether it's the right path for me. So I would say time management is the best way to do it. But I would also caveat this by saying in university is the best way to try, especially now with all the support from the government, Gerakan 1000 Startups, all these, there's so many things that you can actually leverage on.
Do you have any maybe some kind of advice for people who wants to like find their connections in their university years? Kayak bagaimana cara mereka mendapatkan misalnya their co-founders, their CTOs, and their COOs? What's one of the ways that you would do it?
So I think the best way that we've seen too, usually people that are like-minded and similarly driven would be the ones that join a certain club, I think ITB has, oh my God, what is it called? Yeah, Founders Lab.
The Founders Lab,
stuff
yeah.
like that. Yeah, stuff like that. People that are willing to dedicate time to do it usually are people that have the same passion as you. So those are the people you want to work with. But also try as much as possible to add people on LinkedIn. Be shameless about it. I think networking now is so easy, right? And then attend as much events as possible. I think webinar, there's kind of an overload now, but just a good way to get into startups actually for what we've seen is, or the best part about my job actually in startups is to listen to passionate people pitch their ideas. So as much as possible, listen to pitches because that's like the most rewarding part, like you learn so much from just hearing people that are so passionate, sharing their ideas of how they want to change the world. And that way it can inspire you. But finding the right people, I think, is about usually people that have the same goals tend to flock to certain same activities. So it's about identifying what those activities are in your campus, I guess.
Right. Do you think it's also viable to start a startup when you're also working full-time job? Because some people want to work first and then start their own startup.
I don't like it. The first thing we usually ask when we meet a startup is when are you going to go full time, especially if you're very good. Obviously, one is about managing risk, right? You want to have some sense of security. But what we see is if you're doing a startup and working full time, then your chances of succeeding is very low, because you have other responsibilities. And then people in general it's very hard to switch on and off. And the best startup founders are people that are always on. So their entire lives are just thinking about, my startup, what product, what problem. Yeah. So it's tough.
Okay. Another question, how does Corona affect your business and what steps did you take to overcome the problems you're facing?
We're quite lucky in the sense that our team is quite small. Solutions we look at or our normal business activities are very much the same done remotely or in person. I guess the only biggest challenge we have is on the corporate side. Yeah, it's harder for us to sign new corporate partners because a lot of times when you want to work with big corporations, you have to meet them face to face. But obviously, like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, these kind of remote collaboration tools have really helped. And what is interesting is we've seen a lot more because I guess because of the situation, there have been more people trying to do a startup, and we've actually seen more ideas in this market. And yeah, so I would say hasn't affected us that much. Yeah.
Okay. Bagaimana cara mengetahui solusi atau ide kita diinginkan oleh masyarakat atau tidak? Maybe going back to the market demands, as you
Yeah,
mentioned
this is
before.
this customer research, right? And this happens in various stages, yeah. Tapi the first thing you should do, yeah, I'll give you an example there. So we were talking to someone that was trying to do. Actually, I'll give you an example of our. So we had a startup before this, which is Satipa, it's online dating. And then how Razi, my partner, came up with this idea was that he came back from Australia and he was running the biggest dating site there, and then he felt like there was a need, but he felt that himself, right? But we couldn't validate. So he just created a questionnaire, gave it to all his friends. Obviously, sample is quite biased, but give it to all his friends and say, "Would you use this? Is this interesting?" And you just keep doing that. And then there's steps to do, right? Obviously, your first test will be like 50 people if you can. Actually, 10 is fine too. 10 people first. Feedback is good. Then you go back and you create a questionnaire for 50 people, and you keep increasing with scale. Ideally, you'll move from a questionnaire to an MVP somewhere along the way, just so you're moving towards. But it's just about talking to people. The only way you can understand whether someone wants to use your service is to ask people. There's really no way to hack it, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you so much Karen for answering the questions. Mungkin ini kita lanjut ke sesi yang ketiga kali ya. Oke.
Can I drop off the call, by the way? Sorry. But thank you so
sure,
much.
sure.
I think
You
I
can.
do have to go to another call.
Thank you so much Karen for your time today.
So much.
It was really insightful. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Good luck.
Thank you Kak. Oke, jadi sekarang last but certainly not least, our final speaker for the night adalah Bapak Adrian Gunadi, co-founder and CEO of Investry, startup teknologi keuangan berbasis Indonesia dengan satu misi sederhana, sebagai pasar online yang cocok dengan orang yang ingin investasi dan meminjam uang. Oke, sekilas tentang Pak Adrian, beliau menyelesaikan MBA-nya di Rotterdam, School of Management Erasmus University, dan mempunyai lebih dari 18 tahun pengalaman perbankan asing dan lokal dalam retail dan grosir, dan spesialisasi yang kuat dalam keuangan Islam, dengan pengalaman 6 tahun terakhir sebagai Managing Director. Managing Director Perbankan Retail untuk Bank Islam terbesar kedua di Indonesia dengan lebih dari 35 pangsa pasar. Pak Adrian, are you there?
Halo.
Halo. Iya. Aku mau ingetin lagi ya buat yang mau bertanya, jangan lupa di Q&A sessionnya ada, tolong drop in your questions di Q&A di chatnya, nanti aku bacain pas the end of the session. Oke, Pak Adrian, the time is yours. Bisa langsung presentasi.
I think you have my presentation, or?
Oh, okay.
Because I don't have access to it.
All right, wait, I'll ask. Ini kayaknya ada masalah teknis lagi. Maaf banget semuanya. Aku mau ingetin aja sih, karena ini lagi masalah teknis. Aku mau ingetin aja sama semuanya kalau misalnya untuk mengisi link presensi untuk mendapatkan sertifikat, dan juga untuk mengisi link feedback ya, ada di bit.ly/dp3feedback. Dan abis itu juga jangan lupa follow @malazero.project untuk informasi tentang kegiatan-kegiatan Malazero Project lainnya yang pastinya kalah seru dengan Digi Pathway malam ini. Juga mungkin tadi Plug and Play Indonesia tadi juga boleh di follow juga. Kalau mau tahu tentang the life cycle of startup companies, gimana cara bikin startup company yang baru. Oke, ini Pak Adrian udah di share screen.
Okay. Thank you. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Adrian Nadi. I'm co-founder and CEO of Investry. We are Indonesia's leading fintech marketplace lending platform. Outside of Indonesia, we are also operational in Philippines as well as Thailand. So I think in line with what I have been shared from the committee is to give a little view on update on Investry, how we continue to support the SMEs despite the pandemic, and how have we navigated through the pandemic. I think Shiva shared a little bit about my background. So I was actually a banker for almost 18 years in various banks, various segments within the bank, from retail, corporate, wholesale. And basically the idea when I started Investry along with my other two fellow co-founders was we saw a gap. We saw an underserved market with regards to SME or access to credit for SMEs. And so that's when we tried to leverage and use technology and data to make working capital loans more accessible for SMEs in Indonesia. So next slide, please. Next. Next slide. So this slide actually gives a little background to the underserved market or the problem that we were trying to address. They always say that whenever you want to do or start or startup is always start with a problem. And so the problem that we were trying to solve was 172 billion MSME credit gap in Indonesia. And so this gap was driven to the fact of lack of data, lack of information. Small, medium enterprises did not have the sufficient collateral or information or background when it comes to credit scoring. So a lot of the banks were a bit hesitant or unwilling to provide facilities or loans for small, medium businesses. And so this is how we started. And so they saw this as an opportunity for us to provide an alternative solution. Next. So the involvement also stems to the fact that we realize that these are the pain points that the SMEs in Indonesia are facing, and so when we look at this, basically this shares a little bit the challenges that SMEs face in terms of sales, in terms of financing, in terms of business operations. And so, we wanted to start with a solution that can address the needs of the financing, And also it is something that people or small businesses look for. And so when we started the business, we did not spend a lot of marketing efforts per se, because people were looking for working capital solutions, and especially small businesses was willing to find alternatives outside of the traditional financial sector. And so now, not only financing, but we actually are already exploring other business services that we are offering or will be offering in the near future to SMEs with partners. And I'll share a little bit later on how, as a startup, not just focus on one product vertical, but also expanding your solutions and services to other verticals. Next. So after almost about 5 years, we started Investry. What we have done as a startup is the needs of the SMEs, but also creating impact. This slides shows the impact angle that we have contributed in terms of increasing sales for SMEs, increasing workforce for SMEs, and gaining trust for the SMEs. Next. Okay. This is quite unique also, the fact that because financial technology is a new industry in Indonesia, not many people were aware of what fintech was about 5 years ago when we started. So as a startup in a new industry or a new, I would say, sector, it is also important to build a relationship with the regulators. And so this is what we actually did, is a strong relationship with the regulators. In fact, I am also actually chairman of the Indonesian FinTech Lending Association, which is a member of 156 FinTech lending platforms that are operating in Indonesia. So we're not only just growing Investry, but also growing the overall industry, as you can see from this slide, which is quite unique in a sense that it's not just focusing on your startup, but how can the industry grow, and it is also directly impacting the growth of your company. So as we all know now, FinTech lending has grown year on year about 113%. Total loans that we have facilitated on the overall industry is about $1 billion plus, right? So, you see how the industry has also grown, but Investry has enjoyed that growth as well. Next slide. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this gives you a snapshot on how we started. So we have just been 5 years in operation. In fact, we celebrated our 5th anniversary, just a month ago. So I think we have been fortunate. As I said, we have enjoyed the growth of fintech in Indonesia, and in a relatively short period of time, we are already also expanding outside of Indonesia, in the Thailand and the Philippines. So another point that I wanted to make, which is relevant to the digital industry, is venture capital funding. So we had 3 rounds of venture capital funding. We raised our first capital, or raised our first Series A back in 2017. And then we raised another round of Series B in 2018, and we just recently raised a Series C in 2020. So I think what's unique about us is that we are more of a B2B business. So the capital that we raise is actually used more for developing our capital expenditure, expanding our business, as opposed to a business to consumer player, which typically uses the funds that they raise for acquiring customers, marketing, and so forth and so on. So this is actually the milestones that we have achieved in the short relatively short period of time. Next. So what do we do? Perhaps for some of you who may not be aware, we are a lending platform for SMEs, in a sense that small businesses who require short-term working capital solutions can apply through Investry. We would then credit score them and determine the risk profile of the SME. What is their rating before we offer to the lenders, institution, as well as individuals. So basically, we are a platform which is a bit different than a traditional bank or multi-finance company, where they actually give the loans directly out of their balance sheet. So this is a bit different than what we do, of which we are a platform in between the lender as well as the borrower. So I think if you can see from here, the lenders are also institution, which includes banks, multi-finance, institutional lenders as well. So this is actually the business model that we have. Next. Yeah, so this is how we actually do the credit scoring model. We combine both traditional and non-traditional data, data that we're able to obtain through our partnership with the likes of e-commerce, the likes of payment gateways, cloud accounting, e-procurement. We're able to get information or visibility of the SMEs that are applying the loans. So this is one area or one angle, quite unique in a sense that we're not relying on just historical data, but actually data that is real time. So and we use actually AI, machine learning technologies to analyze the credit score of these SMEs using full variables. So as I said, it uses alternative data, for example, e-commerce sales, also transactions through point of sales, POS, to determine the overall creditworthiness of the borrower, which is different than banks that typically rely just on the traditional data. Okay, next. So this is our product. In brief, we are highly focused on what they call supply chain financing, which basically is a type of financing which looks at the overall value chain of a company. You have your suppliers, you have your vendors, you have your resellers. And so our working capital solution for small businesses is actually geared towards this supply chain financing framework. But what's unique is obviously we use technology to automate the process of the onboarding. And as I shared in the earlier slide, we use alternative data, which is quite unique. Next. So I think this has been some of our key strengths in terms of our experience. They always ask why you are different, and so this is how we think Investry is different than the other players. What is our value? Number one is obviously the experience of the founders. Myself, as I said, 18 years in banking, so I have a deep understanding, domain knowledge on financing for small businesses, wholesale, corporates as well. Focus on supply chain financing. So when we started, we focused on a certain niche market that was underserved by the banks. So and then we use technology and data to digitize the ecosystem. And then also we we start to develop beyond lending services, which again, as I mentioned, not only focusing on the financing, but actually expanding our product suite outside of financing, which I'll share a little bit later on the higher level. Sharia, which is quite unique. So this becomes an important proposition that we offer to the small businesses. AI SME credit scoring, that's one of the key factors as well, apart from the retail and institutional lending mix. So, I think with our value proposition as a startup, we've been able to continue to grow strongly despite NPLs, low cost of acquisition. This is very important as a startup. How do you grow, but also maintain your cost of acquisition so you don't encounter a high? And lastly, our borrowers tend to repeat with very short duration, which is good because then you can show more traction. You can also show a lot of repeats or retention with your customers. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is what I mentioned earlier, how, as a startup, we have also evolved, and we're not only doing fintech lending as the single business vertical, but now we are expanding ourselves into different multiple verticals. I think this is very important as a startup. You also need to always innovate and also see other opportunities where your main business can then expand into other product vertical. So Investry, because we are focused on the SME, we're focused on supply chain financing. Then we expanded our business into other digital business verticals. One is the SME credit scoring as a service, AI4C. Second is e-procurement, because it is part of a supply chain, and also digital invoicing under Buildtree, which now we're developing digital invoices for SMEs, suppliers and vendors within an ecosystem. And the one on the right side gives you a little hint on where we are expanding our businesses with the SME focus, but also it comes back to the problem that we are solving in, I believe it was slide number 2, in where we have identified the SME pain points with regards to not only financing, but business operation, expanding or access. So, we're developing other solutions that will help SMEs to achieve this objective. So this is quite unique, but you also see in other successful startups, such as, for example, Gojek started off with ride-hailing, expanded into other verticals such as GoPay, and then you have content through GoPlay. So this is the playbook to be, a successful startup, not just focus on one vertical, but how do you start from that vertical, expand to other business lines, but will also strengthen that single vertical or your main business. Okay. Next. So COVID has been quite, I would say, unexpected when it happened in March, but I believe that Investry has been quite fortunate, prepared, and basically I think some of our diversification and also our strong partnership has enabled us to navigate through COVID. Next slide. Okay, so let's skip next slide. Yeah. So this is just to give you an example on as a startup. Obviously, you need to be very agile because there's a lot of uncertainty that you may not be aware, and definitely I think COVID was a very uncertain event that happened. No one had predicted it even 6 months before it happened, or even 3 months before it happened, right? So it came out of the blue. And so as a startup, you always need to remain agile, to be able to be agile so that you can pivot and enable yourself to navigate through any uncertainty. I think that is what is or one of some of the key DNA of a startup, is that it has to be ready for anything, and it has to move fast, right? And so what we did when we saw that, you know, COVID was going to continue to worsen, especially in Indonesia, number one capital mentioned, closed our Series C1 beginning of the year, because we know that there's going to be a very long uncertainty because of this COVID. So it needed from investors, and so we decided to close before it. And we were fortunate to be able to do that. We were fortunate to also have BRI Venture, one of the biggest corporate venture arm of the biggest bank in Indonesia, and also MUFG from Japan, the corporate venture arm of MUFG Bank. Number two is basically doing a stress test analysis or stress test scenario for your business. How would any downturn because of COVID would impact your business, and how long potentially this will be an impact to your revenue or your cost, right? And number three is also how this COVID would impact the macro economy, and also impacts key industries, because as I shared earlier, Investry supports SMEs that are focusing on supply chain financing for several businesses. So we also need to understand which business has been disrupted because of COVID. So for example, hotel, tourism has been greatly impacted. So as a startup, we stayed away from this sector because we saw that this was a high risk, right? Number four is adjusting your risk selection criteria. So as a business, you need to quickly adapt to the changes, to the risks. And this is what you need to do to identify and navigate through the risk. So what we did is, obviously, as a lending business, we calibrated our risk scoring model. We enhanced our risk scoring model to capture the fluctuations of the economic industry. Number five, expanding into non-lending business streams. This diversifies your revenue. So as a startup, you need to also diversify your revenue, so that if one revenue is at risk,